Welcome to another edition of the post-game press conference, previously on riotradio.ca, now on YouTube, Spotify, and even our own website where you can find every piece of sports content myself and my co-host do. I'm Ryan Pigeau, alongside John Lodge, and this program is about breaking down the recent advancements in the sport world. Of course, it's the NHL and the NBA that are at the forefront, right? Because we've got some major goings-on with round one and round two in the post-season. But then, of course, the Major League and the NFL, we still have a little bit to talk about every league. But today, John, we're getting caught up to speed on round two underway in the NHL, the crazy Marc-Andre Fleury story that came out this week and still has almost every pundit really questioning what's going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I got some stuff on that.
We got today's Kasperi Kapanen trade. We're going to have to, as Leaf fans, take a few moments, and that's undershooting it, to break down that trade a little bit. And then some Raptors Celtics teeing up that series, as both of those teams are coming off of a massive sweep in their first round, feeling great about themselves. We want to discuss Doncic. I think they play tonight, right, in about 45 minutes, game 5 in the Clippers-Mavericks series. And Doncic was insane in game 4 coming off a sprained ankle. So we want to talk about all that, a little bit of round 1 recap, some breakdown, because it's not over yet. And then if you're all right with it, John, some round 2 predictions, maybe see how we're feeling about the upcoming stuff, even though it's not all said and done. There's a couple series I think we can talk about. And then finally, over in the MLB, number one concern for me as a Jays fan is going to be pitching leading into the trade deadline, August 31st. I don't know about you, but I'm assuming you're on the same page. And they start a 4-game series tonight against the Sox, heading into an Orioles series. It's like 8 straight days.
Now, 6-3.
Yeah, they're looking good now, eh? I was going to say they're 500, currently in a playoff spot, thanks to the expanded playoffs. So, as Toronto sports fans, we're sitting here happy where the Raptors are, happy that the Jays are able to kind of pull off some magic right now. And again, 8 straight days with no doubleheaders, just a Sox series right into an Orioles series. And the Leafs are at least making some waves today and giving us something positive to talk about. But that's our quick rundown of what we're going to get into today. I will mention, I wanted to ask you your opinion on the Fernando Tatis stuff, so we'll save that for later on. But boy, has he ever made a bit of a splash in the MLB in the last week and a half, if I don't say so myself. So, as always, there's lots to get into on all fronts. John, I'll let you take the reins in a second, but if you're streaming live, feel free to direct any of your questions right into our live chat or to our Twitter accounts. Mine is at A4Effort, and John's over there is at JON. That's John Lodge Music. So you can fire away at one of those Twitter accounts or right in the chat, and we'll try to answer a question you've got. But what do you think, man? Round 2 in the NHL is underway. What are your initial takes on the things that are going on, and how do you feel about how these series?
Well, first things first, before we get into how the series are going, we have a Bobby Orr alert in the Tampa Bay-Boston game. Coleman went full Bobby Orr and scored on Halak. It is a beautiful goal. You've got to check it out. I know this isn't going to be up till tomorrow, but I tagged you, Ryan, in it in Facebook, or sent it to you on Facebook Messenger. You got to look at that. It was an amazing goal. Great pass and full extension, and in the air, full Bobby Orr smacks it in. Just fantastic stuff.
All right.
But it's interesting because Boston we'll just talk about the series. Jump right into it. Boston comes into the Tampa series as a slight underdog. I believe they were paying plus 110, and Tampa was paying minus 110. So really, it's basically a pick 'em when we're talking about the betting side of it. Boston came out in the first game and they showed that, they're truly never an underdog. And if they are an underdog, they enjoy playing that role, and they're going to play it in the way they know best how to. And Boston is playing Boston Bruins hockey right now. I honestly think that the exit of Tuukka Rask helped them focus, help them center the team and be able to play better hockey, because not that Tuukka was trying to be a distraction, but you had to know that this was an ongoing situation, that he didn't want to be there for more than just the one day. And your teammates know that even if you don't say anything, you can gauge the locker room, you can gauge the feelings of somebody, when someone doesn't want to be there. And now they can just lock in. And whether or not that is the end of Tuukka Rask's career in Boston or not, that's a question for later. But for now, the Boston Bruins are playing much, much better hockey, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, they realize that they're in danger, and right now they're playing a good game too. So we could be seeing a 7-game knockdown slug out fest between Boston and Tampa. This is something that you would think that you would see in the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Something that people would dream about seeing in the Eastern Conference Finals anyway. Right. And we're getting it an entire round earlier.
Well, my belief, I agree with you there. My belief is that Philadelphia is going to pull off their series. I know they're down 0-1 to a strong New York Islanders team, but I do think Philadelphia might be able to substitute as that similar team to Tampa Bay, where they can win in more than one way. Like Philly's notoriously been a decent defensive team; they just always lacked goaltending. Carter Hart's there now, and obviously they can score. So I've actually had it's kind of going into a point that I've got later on, so we'll get back to this, but I've got Boston and Philly meeting up in round three in the conference final, and that might be a nice old style hockey, like a nice good third round conference final matchup for you in replace of Tampa Bay, where I do agree with you. We're kind of seeing a good matchup early on. But back to what you were saying about Boston just being kind of older and experienced. I'm paraphrasing you, but yeah, I just think they're in the heads of so many teams, and right from game one, I've had this funky feeling that the Bruins are in the heads of Tampa Bay as well. Like, did they not give them a hard time throughout the regular season? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Boston simply just doesn't back down from Tampa Bay. There were the two teams in the Atlantic that were fighting for first, right, all season long. So I just find it funny how in 2 straight years now, although Tampa Bay has been such a strong team, they just, I feel like I don't have confidence in them going up against a team like Boston in the playoffs. Columbus is a totally different story, but yeah, man, Boston, Pasternak is back, and Halak seems to have done the job for Rask so far. That was takeaway. And in the game that they play tonight, should Boston win, take a 2-0 series lead, there's a back-to-back tomorrow. So, in both of these series in the East, we're looking at the same thing where, Wednesday and Thursday, Philly has a back-to-back with the Islanders. It kind of goes hand in hand with something else I have kind of brought, where we're flying through these playoffs like we just got to get them done. And I understand the circumstances here, but we could have two teams down 0-3 already by Thursday, right? So again, we got Boston and Tampa Bay tonight and tomorrow, Philadelphia and the Islanders Wednesday and Thursday. But I just think with that first series, that Boston Tampa Bay series, unless Tampa can squeak out a win, don't know the score right now. Um, earlier on, like they cannot fall behind 0-2 or 3-1 to Boston. If they find themselves in that position, John, they're done. And I think Boston's in the head of so many teams. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, the Boston Bruins are definitely one of those teams. The best way I heard it described, I believe it was on Overdrive today, which is uh, they are the envy of so many teams, like the Los Angeles Kings, the Chicago Blackhawks. The
Pittsburgh, yeah,
Boston Bruins are the team that never really broke down. They're the team that were able to keep it going and always be in contention,
yeah,
no matter what. And whatever secret they have, people don't know, but they're definitely in the hands of a lot of teams. Bruins leading the series right now. Game is tied 2-2 going into the third period, so the Lightning definitely need to have a strong third and take this game, because I agree with you, man. If the Bruins take a stranglehold on the series, take a 2-0, take a 3-0 or 3-1 series lead, then Tampa Bay is going to have a
yeah.
hard time clawing back and taking this one to 7. I think this one goes to 7. That's my prediction. But Tampa definitely has to take this game, and it's going to be 1-for-1, I think, until we find a winner in the 7th game. And
Yeah.
the fact that we're having back-to-back games, it's because they want to get the games in before the end of October, the second week in October or something. I don't know when it is exactly, but they want to award the Stanley Cup then, and then have their off season. The beginning of next season is in flux. The NBA has said the beginning of next season is in flux. People are talking December 1st, but we could be seeing January or even February start dates, depending on if they can get fans in the buildings. That's a large question for a lot of people, but unfortunately I don't see it happening for hockey and for basketball. It can happen for football, it can happen for soccer, because
Yeah.
they have open air stadiums, right? You can have it in, say, places like the Boston Red Sox can have fans. I don't know who's going to show up to watch Boston this year, but the Red Sox
Yeah,
can have
they're
fans
awful.
because they have an open air stadium. The Yankees can have some fans because they could have an open air stadium, but places like Toronto would not be able to host fans because the building is closed. No matter how big the building is, it's still recycled circulated air. So buildings with roofs would not be able to be used and have fans operated in it, and that's amplified 5 for the NHL and the NBA because they're in such small arenas compared to football and baseball, which are in sometimes 55 to 100,000 people stadiums.
Right.
Basketball and hockey are in 18,000 people arenas, very tight quarters. So I just don't see that happening. It'll be interesting to see how we go on from the future. But the reason why we're getting to tie it back in, the reason why we're getting such close games in the playoffs is because for some reason they want to end the season in a tight window when we don't have a start for next year. So I don't see why we're doing it.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things where when's the next time you're ever going to see in round two in a series, like, again, if Tampa goes down 0-2, they got to play again tomorrow. Like, it's almost one of the, it's similar to the qualifiers. Us as Leaf fans are sitting here going, wow, they really wasted a lot in was it game 3 or game 4 where it went to overtime, and then they had to show up the next day. And you're just wondering with some of these teams, how are you going to get through playoffs when you've got back-to-backs? It's just a notoriously tougher game. You really need those days off in between to rest. So I get it. It's a totally different style of tournament, right? There's no asterisk beside who wins, but we're always going to remember how much of a different grind it was to win a Stanley Cup or win in any one of these leagues that is trying to perform in the midst of a global pandemic. It's really tricky. But again, just to recap Boston on Tampa Bay, if Tampa lets any of that slip away, it seems to me almost like a basketball series. Call me crazy, but I feel like, again, in basketball, if you go down 0-2, you might as well pack your bags, right? Especially in the first couple of rounds. Teams usually, there's a major discrepancy there. And I feel like Boston will do that to you. And a lot of times in hockey series, you can see it go back and forth. The team could be down
Well,
3-1 and tie up a series and force a game 7. You see it all the time. But again, just call me crazy, but I feel like that's got a basketball feel to it, where if Tampa Bay doesn't keep clawing back, like you said, each game, kind of keep evening up the series, then they're gonna might as well pack their bags because Boston's too strong, too mature, too experienced. They know how to win.
The Toronto Raptors would dispute you on the 0-2 or being down 0-2 and not being able to come back after winning the championship last year, being down 0-2 to the Milwaukee Bucks. I understand that that's not the norm. And in basketball, normally, if you're down that, in baseball, if you're normally down 0-2, it feels like it's a lot. In hockey, though, it's a little different on the normal basis because there's so much fight. Anybody can win on any night. And I actually don't like betting on hockey because it's so
Yeah.
unpredictable. I can't get the flow. Like I'll watch a basketball game and be like, okay, so this team is running, they're going to win the next 2 quarters, but then the other team, they're going to, I can feel it, I can read it, I can register it. But with hockey, it's so random, it's so wild. So it's funny that you akin the Tampa Bay and Boston series to a basketball series, but I guess when I look at it, I can kind of see the parallels you draw, but just because of the psychological advantage
Yeah.
that Boston holds over people that, well, as I knocked my camera around, the Boston holds over people. They could definitely make people give in and give up, right? You got to have that special drive. I think that Tampa Bay, after what they went through last year with the Columbus Blue Jackets and being eliminated and having a defeatist mentality, I think they might have gotten over that. But that's to be seen. We don't know. They haven't really faced very much adversity in this playoffs, right? So
Right.
we'll see when or what happens after this third period, and we'll see what happens in the next game, the next 2 nights, or the next, because the back-to-back is really where you see who's got enough in the tank, who's really got that extra gear going, right? It's the back-to-back that you'll really see it all in.
Well, the main thing I took out of that too is all psychological, right? Not most likely on paper, you're going to take Tampa Bay if you are a betting man and if you are dumb enough to bet on hockey. And then that kind of segues me into my next point. I've taken the Philadelphia Flyers over the New York Islanders. I have from day one, and I still think I'm confident, even though the Islanders are up 1-0 on the series. And I think that back-to-back again in the East, that's what we're discussing right now. I think that's going to be crucial to Philadelphia because, again, on paper, I think they're the stronger team, and they've got the stronger goalie. I think they can win more ways than the Islanders can win. I know the Islanders are looking a little more versatile lately with like how good Barzal has been in these playoffs and a couple other pieces. But just when you're comparing the two styles of hockey, I think Philly would have an on paper advantage. But I imagine they're going to want more from their guys in game 2 and game 3 because it's looking a little bit like that Montreal series where we're giving Philadelphia a lot more credit and they're really not showing it to us for 60 minutes. So I still have that on paper as a Philadelphia advantage. But I wanted to ask you, do you think the Islanders have a similar psychological advantage over Philadelphia right now? Not in the same way Boston would have on a handful of teams, but just in a way that maybe they're up 1-0 on a series. They play a defensive game, and it's going to be tricky. It's a similar style clawback that Tampa Bay has to approach it with Philadelphia.
Well, let me start off by saying that I had Philadelphia at the beginning of the playoffs. I said, look out for Philadelphia before the exhibition play-in sort of round robin that they were doing. Philadelphia, I still have them going. I bet on them 7-1 to win the Stanley Cup. I still believe that they're going to win the Stanley Cup. But they had a bad showing in game one against the Islanders. The Islanders are no slouch of a team, though. People sleep on this team like people were sleeping on the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they're very similar like teams, right? The Blue Jackets and the Islanders, and very gritty teams that will dump the puck, teams that actually the Islanders dump the puck and chase it and close it off more than any team in the entire NHL. It's just a difference of philosophy. The Philadelphia Flyers lost 5-0 to Montreal, and they still won the series. So I don't think losing 4-0 to the Islanders is going to have too much of a psychological advantage or disadvantage to the Flyers. I still believe the Flyers will come out of this one, but they definitely got a healthy dose of let's pay some respect to this team, and they're going to have to get down, and they're going to have to grind. They're going to have to play that tough Philly style hockey that I don't know a lot of those Flyers can play. It's interesting that you said the Flyers Bruins would be like an old style sort of matchup, and I mean the names are names, yes, but I just like, as much as the Flyers, some of them do play a certain way, a majority of them don't, and it's not the old style matchup that everyone would want, unless the Flyers decide to make the choice to get their noses dirty, to get down to the grindstone and play that Philly style hockey.
Don't you think that's a little bit like Boston, though? That's where I kind of think, I think you're right, but I think I'm also right. I think when the Boston Bruins and Philadelphia Flyers do eventually meet, it'll be like that, where both teams have a notorious history of being the big bad Bruins, the Broad Street Bullies. Wow, 2 triple B alliterations. Isn't that crazy? I guess if you want to be, the toughest team in the league, you just get a triple B alliteration and you're set. But either way, those two teams have a history of it, and they both also have really highly skilled players and conform to that new age, modern day 2010 hockey. So it's kind of like, I mean, yeah, like you said, Philly doesn't have all the, but like think of the Travis Konechny's and the Couturiers and the Voraceks and is Radko Gudas? No, he's no longer on there. Anyway, that's a while back. I don't know why I picked that name out of out of a hat there. But again, I think Boston's very similar, are they not? Where they've got your Charlie McAvoys, your Charas, your guys that are greasy, Marchand, like guys that really, I mean, they're not the big bad Bruins anymore, but hell, when they need to, I think Philly Boston is a gross matchup, and I can't wait if it happens.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it, and I just don't think it's the bully matchup that people will think it is, unless they decide it to be, unless the Bruins force it to be. And I don't know
I
if the
hope it
Bruins
is.
want to force it to be. I think the Bruins would be more than happy to try and fly around and be able to cut the Flyers off that way, cut them off at the knees. But yeah, I've been like our mutual friend Dan. He's a big Bruins fan,
Oh, is
and he chirps me every single time something bad happens with the Flyers, and because he knows that I've chosen the Flyers to win the cup. He's like, "Oh, winning the Golf Cup and whatnot." But I still think that the Flyers are going to be a tough challenge. I think they're going to be tough for anyone or tough out for anyone. But looking at that Western Conference, man, it's really
Talk
hard
about a
to
tough
believe.
challenge, buddy.
I was
I'm
going to
glad you're
say,
going there. I'm glad you're
looking at
going
that
there.
West, I
Who
just
who
don't.
would have expected the Dallas Stars of all teams to be the tough challenge? Because Colorado have quickly gone from darling, like absolute darling, especially here. We're paying such attention to Kadri, right? The GTA fans in us. But I mean, we've got McKinnon, Kadri, we've got an entire Cale Makar, such a watchable, likable, darling team already down 0-2 to just a hungry-looking Dallas Stars team, and they've looked just as good as Colorado since the return to play began. It's just they haven't got the same play. They're minus their starting goalie, and it's still white. Like, okay, what's Dallas doing here? Okay, I'll before I go any further, John, I have 3 teams in the West now that I think are favorites, and it's gone from Vegas, Colorado, Dallas to Vegas, Dallas, Colorado in 2 games, and I believe I believe there's a lot of guys thinking the same way as me. Like, what has Dallas done to really make you think they can't go to the Cup final?
Well, I mean, I haven't watched a lot of Stars hockey. I'll be honest, because a lot of the time they're on
Who
late.
has? John, who
Um,
has?
one thing I can say is we've talked a lot about how old they are and how their window is closing. So maybe that they sense
Hungry.
that and they're taking advantage of that right now. They're very hungry, but they're also taking advantage of Grubauer. Grubauer tore his groin, man. I don't know if you watched that play, but it was just an innocuous. He stretched his leg
Game
out
one?
to, I believe it was game one.
Yeah.
I can't
Early in game
remember.
one, he went down and just didn't get up.
Yeah, he
So
couldn't
he's
get
out
up.
indefinitely, right?
I guarantee it's a torn groin. They haven't come out with it, but like, so you have Pavel Frank who's in net, and as much as he's a decent backup, he's not a starting goaltender. And I believe the only other goalie they have on the roster is good old Drew Hutchison. So
Our boy.
yeah, so I just I don't see them being able to compete with the Stars' offensive ability with that sort of goaltending. So unfortunately for the Colorado Avalanche and their ability to put the puck in the net, you got to be able to keep them out of your own net. And that's just it doesn't seem to be what's going to happen for the Avalanche in this series. They have some interesting pieces on that Avalanche team, and I don't know if anyone's going to be on the move, but if Kyle Dubas does indeed go back to a former trading partner, and that happens to be the Colorado Avalanche, there's a certain very large defenseman with the last name Zadorov that really intrigues me and would look really nice in blue.
Well, it goes along with one of my favorite Leafs guys, like Steve Dangle said in one of his most recent things, like the Leafs need assholes.
And that's Zadorov.
Yeah,
Can I just be on?
he's an asshole.
Zadorov plays on the line.
Oh, dude, he's an asshole. He actually does things that are illegal, and he deserves suspensions. He deserves to have his face pounded in, and that's the kind of guy the Toronto Maple Leafs need. If they're going to get over any hump that they think that's in front of them, it is all a mental hump. Like just, it's a theme of the podcast right now, right? But that's the kind of guy. If Dubas is going to make any trades, it's got to be for arseholes because it's that simple. Like you can't more Zach Hymans, more guys that are like don't really care about if they're going to injure you or not. Not because they disrespect you, but because when the puck drops, they have one thing in mind, that's to win the game. They're not really they're sacrificing their own bodies to do the to do the dirty stuff. So that I just wanted to mention how Colorado has quickly gone from darling down to 0-2 and how hungry Dallas looks. But the other darling team and Canada's last remaining representation, the Vancouver Canucks, they're set to play game 2 against the Golden Knights in about 20 minutes, right? That starts around 9:45 tonight. And they're coming off a 5-0 stinker, looking to avoid an 0-2 hole against, again, another team. Like in the West, you've seen how much there's parallel in the East. You've got Philadelphia and the Islanders, Boston and Tampa. Both teams are kind of treating it. It's like a basketball series. It's one, you got to keep clawing back, keep clawing back. Well, on the other side, we've got another parallel because if Vancouver loses tonight, which I fully think is possible with the strength of Vegas, both of these teams that were complete darlings like 4 days ago are going to be down 0-2 and expected to lose their series and really not have that same shine to them that they did, like I said, like 72 hours ago. It's kind of weird, but again, Vancouver, they have to win this game against Vegas tonight. 0-2 against Dallas is bad enough for Colorado. 0-2 against Vegas, that's a death sentence for Vancouver. Do you agree or no?
I think being down 1-0 to Vegas is almost a death sentence to the Vancouver Canucks because they didn't do anything good in that game. They got dominated in that game, and the Vegas, it just cements the fact of how good Vegas is, and it just continues to baffle my mind how they can be so good so consistently from a team that was built from the island of misfit toys. Like I understand that they have they have Mark Stone now, and we've realized that William Karlsson, while Bill is a legit player, but it just continues to make me shake my head. I don't understand how the Vegas Golden Knights are so good. And personally, just watching them, I don't see how any team beats them. I think that they get there, and it's so strange to say that an expansion franchise is going to be lifting the Stanley Cup within 3 years of existence. It's just insane.
Right, and it's a little more different than when the Colorado Avalanche won their cup because they were a relocated team that won in their very first year. So I've seen that bandied about at times where it's like, well, you're never going to beat what Colorado did, and I'm like, well, Colorado didn't really have an expansion draft. They just relocated and won a cup in a new market in their first year. That doesn't even compare. So again, that's why you have to stay off Twitter if you want to expand your want to shrink it. Then Twitter's the best place for you. But there's a lot of people with just a lack of thought process when they make a 240 character tweet. Just ask Rob Wong. So anyway, the biggest storyline in Vegas would be the off ice stuff, and I think everybody who follows hockey is well aware and familiar with the meme, the picture that went out from Alan Walsh, who is Marc-Andre Fleury's agent, this week, that surprisingly stayed up as long as it did, which sent an even bigger message than the original post. It really meant that everybody who was behind it stood by it. And then, John, let me know if you've been filled in the way I have, or if I've completely got this wrong. But in the following press conference that kind of addressed the situation, there's a lot of heat falling on the reputation now of Marc-Andre Fleury. And it's amazing how quickly it's like dissolving in front of our eyes, how he's such a likable guy, team guy, wouldn't do anything to hurt the team. He's essentially stuck up for his agent in all this this controversy, and really either read the room wrong or completely lied to us all, and proven that he was really the man behind it. And that's what you're getting from a lot of experts saying, like, Fleury is no longer considered a team guy. He's essentially gone out behind his own team's back and signed off on this move by the agent. Again, there's not many people that are going to tell you an agent controls anything in a player agent relationship. It is essentially an employer employee, and employer being the player. So John, let me know if I'm missing anything here, but from what I understand, Fleury comes out to the media, stands by Alan Walsh, which kind of doubles down for everybody else that thought that this is Fleury. This is Fleury's opinion of the situation, and maybe his viewpoint that people have a perception of him. He's no longer the stud, all-star, maybe even Hall of Fame goalie that he used to be considered as. When you break down the numbers and how his success has really been more team success than individual. Am I missing anything here? Like, Fleury's reputation is really taking a solid hit lately.
I think that Marc-Andre Fleury was behind it. I'll be 100% on that. Alan Walsh. Let's just be frank. And just collecting my thoughts.
I'll be Ryan. You be John.
Just doing my best Barack Obama impersonation here. Just collecting my thoughts without too many ums and ahs. There is no way that an agent releases that without the permission of the player, because immediately that agent would be fired, and there was no dismissal of the agency. I think maybe this happened out of jest. Maybe someone DM'd Fleury a picture that they drew up that they made, and Fleury's like, haha, he sent it to his agent. Right, he's like, look at this, the blah blah blah, and then they found it funny, and
could be,
one said, hey, maybe we should post it. Oh yeah, let's post it, and so I don't know if it was just fully one person. I don't think Fleury went out and had the picture commissioned and then sent it to his agent and told him to. I don't think there's that much behind it. I think it's just one of those series of unfortunate events, we are emotional creatures. So at an emotional point in time in Marc-Andre Fleury's life, where he just lost his father, he maybe lost. We don't know how he's been reacting to that. Now he's losing his number one gig. We don't know how he'll react to that, and so I don't blame him, even if he did have this or orchestrate this whole thing, because it's just his emotions playing out. It really sucks what's happening to him right now, but it was obvious that it was a tandem thing. There's no way that the agent did it on his own. Marc-Andre Fleury was in on it, and him denying to answer a question just screamed volumes. I can't remember the question word for word what he denied to answer, but it just screamed, I'm
back to back.
I don't want to say it, right?
Back to back. Yahoo Sports' Greg Wyshynski even came out and tweeted about it, saying, like, he had a question lined up, and this is the issue with the post-game Zoom calls, because your question actually gets cut off, and your mic gets cut off immediately after you ask a question, so there's no clarification nowadays, as there traditionally is. But Wyshynski actually had to scrap his own question to do the follow-up and ask Fleury. So, as a paraphrase, the first question was like, okay, well, were you behind it? And when he didn't answer it, Greg Wyshynski said, so just to clarify, you weren't or you were behind Alan Walsh posting the picture? And instead of answering it again, Fleury said that's the same question. And that's what's really got people really upset, is he's avoiding it and clearly stating the obvious, that as you said, it's a tandem. But my question is, okay, 15 years must be the difference. That's how long he's been an agent to Fleury. But how come he can buy into that tandem but can't buy into the tandem right in front of him that could potentially win him his fourth career Stanley Cup? I'm a little bit concerned that you could be onto something with the emotional state of mind, because I had forgotten that he'd been through so much in such a short period of time. But I don't know if that excuses any of this, because I heard it said earlier on in the week, and I think it makes a perfect point. Team guy, you got to earn that back, man. Like all the reputation that you had, and this is where it's just a parallel on life. Is like everything you've built up can be taken from you with one mistake, one public mistake, one false move. And I think you could be right. Like I doubt that it was something planned. It was probably more in jest. And the reaction to it might not have even been forecasted properly. You could have been sitting there with Alan Walsh going, oh, they'll get a laugh out of this. It's meme culture. We're in 2020. But no, we've taken this seriously because it sends a greater message. It sends something. We want to talk about unwritten rules. We'll get into that later on. But it kind of sends something about unwritten rules in sport and relationships behind the scenes, does it not? It kind of hits at the whole team guy thing. Like Fleury hasn't had the greatest season. He hasn't had the greatest last 5 years. He's carried the guy who's eventually won the cup. There's no denying that, but he personally hasn't been the starter to win the cup. So he's had his part in things, but he personally has struggled in his athletic career and needed the help from Matt Murray. And now, like when Kelly McCrimmon makes this move mid-season, it's not because it was unwarranted. Robin Lehner was a steal of a deal, which, by the way, the Leafs had a piece of. They could have been smart enough to keep him if they were able to rig something else. But Dubas used.
Hutchison was better. Drew Hutchison was
Oh
better.
God, obviously. But it was Andreas Johnsson's cap LTIR that I believe Dubas was able to use at the deadline, and I think they got a third-round pick out of it. So people were commending Dubas for at least, like, not gaining a player, but at least using $5 million in cap space, facilitating a deal between two teams and getting a pick out of it. Either way, Kelly McCrimmon made that move knowing that Fleury had been struggling all year. As you alluded to, it might not even be an athletic thing. It could be just how much he's been going through. You got to give him some help and some, assistance. Those are the same thing, Ryan. But Leonard comes in, plays great, and it's yet another story of Marc-Andre Fleury kind of losing his net. And our buddy Brian Hayes made a point that I think makes a decent amount of sense. He thinks he's in the head of Marc-Andre Fleury, and he thinks Fleury doesn't believe he'll be a Hall of Famer now. He's got one Stanley Cup that he was the starter for, and a total of 3. But even on this new team where he was the face of the franchise for a short minute, he still could be, right? Like it's murky water now, but he's seeing this same thing that's happened twice in a row in Pittsburgh happen a third time over. And I think Hayes makes a good point. There might be a little bit of emotional knee-jerk reaction in him going, oh my gosh, like it's not happening to me again. But again, I still don't think it was right. I don't think anybody agrees with Fleury right now. He's really done something tough to his reputation.
Well, first things first, you have to understand that before this year, Pete DeBoer was the enemy.
He was.
And Marc-Andre Fleury may not have liked him for whatever reason. That doesn't go away when someone becomes your coach. You may have to learn to like someone and be in the same room as someone, but if there's a reason why you don't like that coach, if maybe they said something to you during the series or during the comings and goings that you didn't like, or they did something coached a way you didn't like, sent guys into you, so on and so forth. There are so many little things that people have grudges for that you could never even imagine, right? And so maybe Marc-Andre Fleury harbors some sort of malcontent for Pete DeBoer off the ice for some reason. And there could be, like, I guess the point I'm making is there could be any sort of reason behind his disinterest with his head coach, and
Yeah.
and I to the point of being a Hall of Famer, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he's legitimately a Hall of Famer no matter what. I think that because when I originally thought back of Marc-Andre Fleury, for years I thought of World Juniors Marc-Andre Fleury kicking the puck or shooting the puck into his own defenseman's ankle and putting it into his own net and costing us the medal. But
such an old reference of Marc-Andre Fleury too. That's so funny.
But now when I think of Marc-Andre Fleury, I think of that big smile. I think of the Stanley Cups. I think of the guy who helped lift the Vegas Golden Knights off the ground and become the team that they are today. Without Marc-Andre Fleury, who's to say that that team gets the fan base that they get?
Good point.
He was legitimately a mascot for that team. So does he feel hurt? Yeah. And does he not like his new head coach? Maybe not. And is he in a bad place mentally? Maybe so. And all this adds up to maybe the perfect storm at the wrong time. And you make a mistake. People make mistakes. We're humans. So,
Yeah.
he'll pay for this one. But whether or not
Unfortunately.
he's a Hall of Famer, he's a Hall of Famer.
Okay, so John, here's why Hayes. Oh, there, we're good. I think we're good. Here's why Hayes was saying essentially that he may not be a Hall of Famer because you've won 3 Stanley Cups, but in 2 of them, you weren't the starter. Somebody else had to come in and do the job for you, and you're gonna get put into the Hall of Fame over somebody who had a consistent superstar career. Like it goes back to I'm hurt for Marc-Andre Fleury because I think Hayes does have a point because I'm a Freddie lover. But I think Freddie's gotten a lot of criticism that's been undeserved. And I think it's going to keep coming because he's a goaltender. And that's the hard part about being a goaltender. Unless you are Carey Price, unless you are Dominic Hasek, the rare Kiprusoff, Habib, there's only a few rare ones that can get away with it. And even still, their shelf life can be short. I think sometimes you just have to sit there and take it as a goaltender. And I think with Fleury, his lack of success, his lack of individual success, not team success, he's won cups. His lack of individual consistent success might keep him from being a Hall of Famer now. And when Brian Hayes said it, he said it with such conviction. And he ends it with, and I think Fleury knows it. And you're going, oh my gosh, you know what? You have a point. And I thought, okay, you could still see in 5 years or whenever, when the career's all said and done, amongst his class, maybe he is the outright guaranteed Hall of Famer. But if it's going to come down to the wire and you're going to look at his career and his numbers and really just if those are going to be what gets him in, which is normally what gets him into the Hall of Fame, he may not get in just based on how it's gone since the '09 Cup. But I wanted to add, when you said you're one of the simple memories you have of him, my favorite memory and one that's ingrained in my mind, Detroit, Pittsburgh, the second time around when Pittsburgh actually won the Cup, there's like 3 seconds left in the game, and it's a 2-1 game, Pittsburgh, and Fleury dives across his net to save a wide open chance, and they win the Cup. And it's a Fleury save that essentially wins them the Cup. That'll get you in the Hall of Fame. But when the career is kind of followed up with the rest of it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know if that's essentially going to be enough now that another guy's had to come in, not just 2 times, maybe even a third time to win that team a cup. So you could see where he doesn't get in, but I hear you out. It's Marc-Andre Fleury, dude. He's one of the most famous goaltenders of our generation. So there's almost a guy that could get in on merit alone.
Yeah, on his face, on his smile,
Yeah.
on his public appearance, his public perception. You bring up a lot of those goaltenders, the Kiprusoffs and whatnot, and
They might
so
not be Hall of Famers.
Martin Brodeur and Dom Hasek, they're in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if Kiprusoff gets there. I don't
Yeah.
know if a lot of these other goaltenders get there because they weren't the profile that Marc-Andre Fleury was. And Marc-Andre Fleury had the profile he had because he was on Sidney Crosby's team. And so, yeah, maybe he didn't
Yep.
earn his keep all the time. But looking at his stats, he started 60 games in 6 straight seasons. He was the workhorse. He was a man for a very long time. And so if he's not the man now and he has to step back, so be it. But I still don't think I think Brian is insane, honestly, to say that as monotone as I'm saying this, but to say that Marc-Andre Fleury isn't a Hall of Famer, or he may not be, or he may be losing his Hall of Fame status and he knows it. I think that's a joke of a headline. I think Brian Hayes is just trying to get people to click and watch, as he always does, and he does a great job of it. And I love you, Brian, for it, because I watch all the time, so you get me hooked too. But there's no way that Marc-Andre Fleury isn't a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer just like Carey Price is a Hall of Famer, and Carey Price hasn't won a damn thing other than a gold medal.
Yeah. I can see him getting in on merit alone, right? Look how many of those Maple Leafs from the last Cup, the 1967 Cup. Look how many of them got into the Hockey Hall of Fame just based on merit alone, the popularity of the players at the time. So you look at the popularity of that Pittsburgh team throughout this generation. It's essentially been unparalleled. There's been a few teams like Chicago and LA who have come and gone, but they've had Sid. You know what I mean? They've had the best player in the world and won 3 Stanley Cups in doing so. And Fleury has been the franchise goaltender through all of it. Again, may not have won the last 2 cups, so that might be why people get on his case. But on merit alone, he'll still probably get in. It's just there's a lot of good points there. That's why if it's close, like if there's 3, 4 guys ahead of him, he's not getting in that year. I'm sorry, he'll have to wait a year. He'll have to keep waiting. It might not be as much of a lock then, to rephrase it. But let's just confirm. Have we gotten all the current stuff out of the way? Because I think we want to go outside the bubble. We've got a couple of points here. Todd Reirden fired after 2 seasons in Washington. While Trotz
Yeah, they want a more
succeeds.
experienced coach after
Yeah,
not getting
but well, they
Trotz.
let go of a guy that's succeeding everywhere else. Like Trotz has been succeeding in the island since he left. Matter of fact, he was not re-signed the moment after he won a Stanley Cup, and that was like it was already reported and a given throughout that playoff run. But again, 2 seasons in Washington. They set themselves a high bar, but they obviously don't, succeed in their eyes. And Reardon's out now. The 2 front runners are our boy Mike Babcock and Gerard Gallant. I think it's more likely that Gallant ends up there, just because again, if you've missed or if you haven't reached what you think is your potential in 2 straight seasons, Gallant, I believe, is the kind of guy that's going to whip guys back in shape if you think it's an effort issue or anything like that. And Babcock's getting paid to hunt and fish, right? And just getting paid by the Maple Leafs. So the last thing he wants to do is take another NHL job and miss out on that money. That's my initial opinion. But what do you think in Washington? What's going on there?
Just letting it breathe for a second. Yeah, I don't think Babs. I think Babs is actually coaching again, but it's over
University.
Yeah, he's just it's some sort of volunteer position, not being paid. So I don't think Babs gets in back into the NHL so soon. I definitely don't think he gets the head coaching job of the Washington Capitals. I find it hilarious that Barry Trotz eliminates the Capitals. That was fantastic. Just great theater. You could write a movie about that entire story, right?
Right.
Guy brings team all the way to the Stanley Cup. Team disrespects guy comes back, just kicks team's ass, right?
With his own team, with a new team, no problem.
No problem. Like it wasn't even a thing, right? Yeah, you could write a whole movie about that. Disney, contact me. But
Well, think of this too. Think of this. How often does a coach know its opponent that intimately when you're preparing for a 7-game series? It just never happens for a coach to know the players on the opposing team that well. Barry Trotz did have a significant advantage in that series, but to his credit, he took advantage of that and dummy just opponent. What am I trying to say? His old team.
Yeah, but I mean, it's in the comments made by the organization. We need a more experienced coach. I mean, why would you even say that? Just fire the guy, fire the coach, and
take a
say
shot
we're
at him.
looking for a new coach. Do not say we need a more experienced coach. You're not even taking a shot at Todd Reirden saying he's inexperienced. You literally just took a shot at yourself. You turned not to make fun of turning a gun on yourself, but you did. You turned the gun on yourself, man. Like just say we're firing the head coach and we're looking for someone else. Not we're looking for a more experienced head coach, because the jokes just make themselves up. Right. So it was just funny to hear the Washington Capitals say that. I think Gerard Gallant's an excellent fit for Washington. I think he's an excellent fit for the players they have there, and a steal of a head coach. But there is another name out there.
Yeah, he wants a head coaching. If you're thinking of the same guy I'm thinking of, he's rumored to be coming here, but he says he wants a head coaching job.
Yeah, he wants a head coaching job.
And he's been there in the past, hasn't he?
Yeah, so Mr. Brucey Boudreau, I think he might end up in there too. I mean, now that there's a head coaching gig available, so it'd be interesting to see if he ends up behind the bench of the Capitals. But yeah, it'll be something for the off season. I think that happens because people will be seeing where all of the apples fall after the season is over, right?
Definitely.
The only teams that you would think won't be making serious changes are the 2 finalists, right? So, yeah, we'll see where or what coach ends up leading Alexander Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals. But until then, it's just speculation. Side note, can I just say about these new hockey sticks that Tim Hortons has? Every single one of them is Canadian, except for Ovechkin. Why is Ovi in there?
Do they have to be Canadian though?
But they're all Canadian. All of them.
Okay, and then Ovi.
They didn't pick 34. They put 16 for the Leafs.
Interesting.
Right?
Maybe they got
So,
confused and thought 16 was the highest paid player. We got a lot of them.
oh man, yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. Actually, do you want to get into that? Do you want to jump right into it, or do you have something else about
Last
before we get
point.
into the
Last
before we
point,
get
and
into
they
the
kind of go
Leafs?
hand in hand. Jimmy Rutherford, the guy that's involved in the Dubas trade today, it says they 100% have to trade Murray or Jerry. So you saw guys on Twitter initially when the Kapanen trade went down, and they didn't know what the return was. Don't you hate that too? Just leaving us all in the lurch. The Leafs have dealt Kasperi Kapanen. Period. Send tweet. Pardon me. Thanks, Elliot Friedman. What was that, man? So anyway, a lot of people speculating that it might have been, to Pittsburgh, and then end a tweet. People were speculating, hey, is Murray coming back? Jari coming back? Because Rutherford says that they 100% have to trade them. So we'll keep an eye on, obviously, that Pittsburgh situation, because that's a big deal. That really is. Cap is a concern, and Seattle coming into the league. So poor Rutherford, that's a big situation. And I think Murray's on the way out, writing's on the wall there. But that's less important, man. Cappy's gone. The Leafs get the 15th overall pick back in the trade, so it's almost hard to criticize that Marlowe trade now. You're losing 2 spots in the draft. The pick that you ended up having to give to Carolina is now kind of back in your pocket. But Kapanen and his $3.5 million are out the door. Gives us an answer. That was the first guy to be shipped off to open up a little cap room. What do you think?
Yeah. So no surprise, right?
No.
We were talking about the Fantasyland trades that weren't going to happen, and then once we got back to reality, we said that Johnson and Kapanen would be moved.
And maybe
And
Kerfoot, but how do you really deal with it, right?
yeah, but now we've seen move one, Kasperi Kapanen, and I find it interesting. Goes back to Pittsburgh, right? Goes back to the team that drafted him.
Is it weird
We
that
got
that didn't surprise me? I'm
well,
like, yeah, it makes sense.
the Phil Kessel deal. Uh, maybe the Pittsburgh Penguins are the ones now who get to shake their heads about giving up the 15th overall pick for. Or giving up a first round draft pick, and then the Leafs get to have a steal somehow. Who knows? But in my opinion, thinking about the trade, and before I get into winners and losers, I don't know if the Leafs end up keeping that pick. I'll
You
get
beat
in.
me
I'll
to
get
it.
into those
Yeah.
theories, but Cappy going over to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They got Pontus Aberg, and they got a Lindholm as well. I don't know.
Oh, Jesper Lindgren, you're talking.
Jesper Lindgren, sorry, not Lindholm. Lindgren, Jesper Lindgren, defensive prospect,
Came over from
and
Ottawa, I believe, in the Connor Brown trade. Zaitsev Brown, I believe we got CC Lindgren and someone else, if I can
yeah,
remember correctly.
yeah, so the guys that Toronto brought back are basically AHL players, right?
Yeah.
So we're thinking that this is basically a cap dump of $3.5 million and opens up some space. After the deal, the Leafs had $7.6 million in cap space, and we project that there will be more trades that happen. Obviously, the Leafs bringing in the first overall draft pick. Everyone seems to think that the Leafs won this deal and won it well, like soundly, by a lot. It was a landslide victory for Leafs because of the winger that they picked up. I can't pronounce his last name, but apparently a top
Oh,
top
Hallander.
six Hallander. That's it, a top 6 prospect. So being able to possibly get 2 top 6 prospects. But yeah, getting back to that first round draft pick, Ryan, I don't really know if the Leafs end up keeping it
Yeah.
because anyone at 15, you're not going to be ready to plug into the team right away. You've got guys ready to play. And if someone wants to take that pick off your hands and it goes hand in hand with getting you a number 1 D man in this team, then maybe that number 1 pick is on the move in the near future.
Yeah, you beat me to it because I even said it earlier today to somebody else. I'm not convinced they don't either move down in another trade or completely ship or flip that 15th overall pick back in another deal. Because again, we're looking at kind of crunch time, just as much as it's crunch time for Jim Rutherford. He's gone ahead and his explanation was, I've traded away all my other first round picks. Like they're not helping me right now. And this window on this team is where the Leafs could be in 5 to 10 years. Like it's closing now. So he's like, we need Kapanen back now. We need somebody that can contribute. We had to give up that 15th pick. Whereas I think the Leafs aren't really in a position to need to draft, but they're not quite as far down the road as Pittsburgh. So that's where I figured, okay, they might be in a position to say, okay, this pick it's helpful because it kind of washes away the controversy about the Marlowe trade and how we've now lost the lottery, and now all of a sudden we're giving up the 13th overall pick. Well, okay, so Dubas can turn around and appeal to the fan base and appease us by saying, okay, look, you've got your 15th overall pick. We've only dropped 2 spots. And then again, in my mind, I thought, well, if he's going to be on the aggressive, which is what we expect, he's probably going to turn around and flip that pick, maybe in a Johnson deal, maybe in a Johnson Dermott Nylander deal. Maybe we're talking the 15th overall pick to add to a team that may already be wanting offense, like a Nylander. Like, again, we're talking about still fantasy trades still could be available. So if we're going to completely ignore that, fine. But to maybe just remind people that that's still on the table, you could be packaging the rights of Dermott, Johnson, Nylander, throw in a first. Okay, we need a first pairing defenseman, right? I'm sorry, but like, those fantasy deals are the ones that start to come to my mind right away. So whether it's as crazy as that or something really simple, I doubt that 15th overall pick is in the Leafs' hands come draft day. I doubt it. I don't see it's not super necessary for them to pick a guy 15th, even in a super deep draft, when you can't guarantee that they're going to make an impact right away. Although Nick Robertson proved them wrong, they have some decent drafting capability, and some guys are going to be pretty like ready. Even Robertson took, I think it was a year and a bit to get into this NHL. So you got to be careful. There's a couple of ways to handle it, but I'm not convinced they don't flip that pick, or at least find a way to get more assets back on that.
Yeah. So we've talked about what the Leafs have coming in to the system previously, and actually we've failed to talk about a defenseman that they've signed that is coming into the system, Mikko Lehtonen from
Yes.
the KHL, top defensive prospect, as well as Barabanov. So 2 players coming in that are already on the books. I've seen a lot of naysayers talking about how the Leafs have a lot of players coming off the books. So this $7 million doesn't mean anything. They're going to have to sign players in, but they have a lot of players right now that they could plug in at minimum contract deals that are already on the books. So Lehtonen plugs in on the defense. You already have Sandin. You plug Barabanov, then you plug Robinson in. You get rid of the likes of Barry and CC. Dermott, say he's gone. You can Lehtonen would take or Sandin or Lehtonen would take Dermott's spot realistically. And then you go out and you have this this cap space that you've acquired, and you go spend it on a Pietrangelo, right? All of a sudden, Pietrangelo's your number 1, Riley's your number 2, Muzzin's your number 3. Plug in number 4,
Most
5,
teams
and
that are
6.
going to succeed have that top 3. Their top 4 usually has one guy that could be maybe a bottom pairing D-man, but on the right pairing in a top 4 makes it a solid top 4. And that's what you're saying. You'd have a Riley, a Blank, it could be a Pietrangelo, and a Muzzin. I think that's what we've been saying all along. When you've got the other pieces stockpiled, you don't expect Dermott to come back, but you've still got Hall and Sandin sitting there ready to be in your bottom 6, or for Hall to move up and play with Muzzin, right, in your scenario. You've got it's Mikko Lehtonen, right? That's his name?
Mikko, yeah.
Because there's also another Mikko prospect, Mikko Kokkonen. So the Leafs have a couple of prospects, but Mikko Lehtonen is a little bit higher on the depth chart because I believe he's out of Finland. I can't remember where he was playing. He might have been playing for Jokerit, which is the Finnish team that's in the KHL. So there's a little bit of confusion there. For me personally, I can't remember exactly how it goes. But there's a couple of guys that could slot in, and I heard it brought up today on Overdrive. Like, the question is, Pietrangelo even a smart move? And even Craig Button said, like, I'd look into it. It's not something you want to handcuff yourself. Like, it's the Tavares Stamkos conversation all over again. A local boy coming home, going to need a lot of money, kind of closer to the wrong side of 30. Great defenseman, but how much are you willing to sacrifice your future to bring in a guy in free agency when you could essentially make a trade for a contract that's better for you? Things like, there's a lot of arguments against it, but you could see where it's what we said on the last Leafs postmortem. If you were to take that third line, completely deconstruct it, maybe not re-sign some poorly defensive defensemen like Cody Ceci on $4.5 million, you've got a lot of money sitting in your pocket. If you take advantage of those entry-level deals you've signed, those young guys, the Barabanovs, the Robertsons, the ones who are supposed to make the team out of camp, but aren't going to really contribute offensively right away, like they're still in their growing phase. To make that your third line, but you instill a certain style of hockey where they're actually, you've seen some of the third lines in the league, like, they have to be strong, willing to get pucks turned over. They don't have to score every shift. If you can do that, then you're going to have all that money left over just for your top pairing defenseman. You really don't need much else because it's all in the pipeline. You're talking about Kokkonen, Lehtonen, all these guys that could fill in a bottom 6 role. So I don't think it's super hard, but you heard Dubas today say if there was another Jake Muzzin, I mean, no questions asked, we'd be trying to trade for him already. So you know the kind of guy they're looking for, a defensive guy. It might not have to be a superstar if they have their sights set on somebody who can just get the job done. But again, we're not asking Riley to play with scrubs for another season because it's literally just it's a recipe for failure. Like poor Morgan Riley is getting the Dion Phaneuf treatment sooner or later, where you never pair him with anybody who's even got legs to skate in the NHL. How is he going to succeed?
Yeah. It's interesting because you hear Pietrangelo and people say, well, it might not be the smart deal. And Pietrangelo has a lot of ties to St. Louis, and Pietrangelo wants to stay in St. Louis. It's funny you call him a hometown boy, but you hear him talk about St. Louis and how he's got brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws and best friends and just ties to the community. So maybe, yeah, he was born in Toronto and he grew up in Toronto, but he's definitely, his hometown is now St. Louis. And St. Louis has a lot of defensemen. So so be it. If they want to spend the money on Pietrangelo and keep their captain, then maybe you trade for one of their other defensemen that they've signed. I love Colton Parayko. He is a tough, gritty defenseman. He's a big boy. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 240, 235, 240 pounds. He's a big boy.
And somehow he can still move. He's fast. He's not slow.
Yeah, and so yeah, maybe it's a guy like a Parayko you go after, or we brought up before Zadorov. Zadorov is a big boy. I don't know his exact height. I believe it's 6'7". I might be wrong. He's one of the tallest defensemen out there. He's not a Zdeno Chara, but he definitely plays like Chara does,
Right.
and that's the guy that we're always pining after, someone with a little bit of sandpaper, a little bit of edge. Now, who's to say if he could get away with the stuff he gets away with in Colorado, wearing the blue and white with a big maple leaf on your chest? It's almost like you wear a spotlight and you get caught for everything. But you got to try. So one of those guys I could see Toronto trading for or adding. And you talk about what Kyle Dubas said. We were talking about the first round pick. He already said today that if the right deal came along, that first round pick would be gone.
Yeah. So it's hard to say where they go, but all we know is it's kind of going to be in a certain defensive direction. If they stockpile on more offense, I'll be shaking my head. I doubt that there's even going to be any type of trade that involves like an offensive guy coming this way, unless it's like that huge big ticket guy where he's going to play 25 minutes, 30 minutes a night and get 45 points. Like that's a little different. But then you're talking about that fantasy trade I was kind of concocting, right? Where you're throwing in every single asset you have that you're not willing to resign or that you could see walking away, which would be like Nylander, Dermott, the first, literally anything, just to get back the best player available. So again, you can't really guarantee which direction they go, but it's gonna have to be like more defensively. And I mean, player wise, we're not gonna sit here and concoct a bunch of trades or anything like that because usually we're gonna be wrong. But let's get into the NBA, man, because I mean, the Raptors and Celtics both.
Before we do, I just wanted to say, sorry, I lost you there. Are we good? Am I back?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to say before we get out of hockey, man, it reminds me of the old baseball reference we have talked about with the Blue Jays. When you stockpile the offense and you have enough offense to win, then you go sell some of that offense to get your pitching. And in this case, you go sell some of that offense to get your defense.
Right? I agree with you there.
This is the point in time where this is the come to Jesus moment, for lack of a better term, for Kyle Dubas. And I think that he understands what he needs to do, as much as the rest of the world and the Leaf haters of the world will like to think that he's still going to make mistakes. I think he knows what he has to do, and he's smart enough to get the job done. So, full faith in the Leafs going forward.
What if there's no trade available? What if there's no trade out there? Then what does he do?
There is a trade. Well, there's free agents out there. There's Torrey Krug. He's available, and he's going to cost a lot of money. But if you can free up the space, then I would go after a guy like Krug as well. Like I said, Pietrangelo's a free agent too. So if no one wants to trade with you, then no one wants to trade or trade a big guy to you, then there are guys in the free agent market you can go after. You just got to move these assets you have, and like we said, they are assets for the Leafs. I believe the reason why Kapanen was able to move is because so easily was because most of his money was paid, man. Just like Janssen, most of his money is paid. Tavares paid. Matthews paid. Marner paid. Nylander, these guys have all been paid. They have they have cap hits, but they're not due money. So the owners are more than willing to take on these guys because they don't have to pay them. They don't have to send them a check.
Well, something's got to happen, right? But again, this is why I say Dubas has certainly hit that kind of window, because I would consider myself a Dubas supporter up until now. And he's going to have to do something this offseason that convinces me that I still am, because I'm at the point where I don't believe he can do it now. I personally am. I see that he makes a Kapanen trade and comes in with a 15th overall pick, and I say, okay, like I said earlier, he can appease the fans and say, okay, here I am back at 15 instead of 13. We missed the playoffs still. You know what I mean? There's still an issue here. So if it doesn't get resolved, if that 15th doesn't turn into something that I like to see, then again, it's back to square one of, do I even like this GM anymore? Am I totally off the bandwagon now? Because I've been a Dubas supporter for like 4 or 5 years now. I was like totally on the Dubas train, and I sit here every time we bring up the Leafs now. I go like, I don't even know if he can do it. I doubt he can do it. I'm at the doubting point, so he's got to actually prove me right, because I think I'm amongst a lot of other Dubas supporters. Like at this point, you're like, dude, I'm not going to sit here and support another person who thinks they can lead the Leafs into the Holy Land when they're just as stubborn as everybody else I've ever seen run the team. It's unfortunate, but if he can't, I don't see him getting anything really spectacular done, but it's fun to talk about. Like, it's a great podcast material. I don't see it happening, man. I don't.
The one thing you can't see happen is the Islanders win the Stanley Cup this year, because if the Islanders win the cup, then
Lamoriello?
we'll never hear the end of it because of Lamoriello, because he went to a team that John Tavares left, by the way. It's not just Lamoriello. It's Lamoriello left the Leafs the same time John Tavares came to the Leafs.
Yeah.
Right. So the parallels will be will be never ending, and people will laugh and people will make memes, and it will be hard to live with as a Leaf fan if the New York Islanders end up somehow coming through with a win. But yeah, I think it's time we move on. So what's up next?
NBA, the Raptors and the Celtics are coming off 2 sweeps. So my main takeaway from that is, although it's like we talk about, it's going to be a toss-up because of the question mark around Lowry. The beauty is you got 2 teams coming off sweeps. They essentially are feeling themselves. It should be good basketball from the start. I know the Celtics, they're not world beaters, but I think it's going to be the harder series than the Milwaukee series, if that makes any sense. I think if the Raptors can get by the Celtics, that's how I put it, then they're going to handle Milwaukee, basically Giannis plus a bunch of guys. But I think the Celtics are more of a, like, again, it could be a 6-7 game series. For the purpose of my takes, I've got the Raptors winning it, but I mean, there are a lot of people who think it could be a toss-up, especially with that Lowry question mark. So what's your initial thought process going into this type of series, coming off of the 2 sweeps? How do you feel about the Raptors and the Celtics?
Before we get into basketball, hockey update, Palat wins it for Tampa Bay, 1-1 in the series.
Series is tied. That's good.
So, okay, getting into the Raptors. I want to talk about the first round a little bit, how exciting it was for me, man. Basketball all day, and then I would get into hockey later on at night, and man, I was watching so much sports. I almost feel like I was in a coma a lot of the times. It was an out-of-body experience. I don't know. I was sweeping. Wasn't just the Raptors. Celtics swept. The Heat swept. And the interesting thing is, before the playoffs started, if someone was to say 3 of the 4 winners in the quarterfinals of the East are going to sweep and 1 won't, who would you pick? There's no one in this world who would have not picked Milwaukee to sweep. And they're the one team that doesn't sweep. They get beat in game 1. Orlando does it again and beats the team in game 1 when no one's expecting it. And they haven't been able to really show up since. But it does say a lot for your Milwaukee take, right? That the fact that the Orlando Magic were able to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, they were able to outgame them. Mm-hmm. Now, the parallels can be drawn to the Raptors losing game 1 to the Orlando Magic. But the Raptors were asleep at the wheel. They're obviously a much better team than the Milwaukee Bucks. Getting into the series headed up with the Celtics and the Raptors, man, steel sharpens steel, right? Iron sharpens iron. It's going to be a great series. It's going to be a tough series, but it's one that I wanted to see because I didn't want Philadelphia, because as much as Philadelphia, you can never sleep on them. It's not a tough enough matchup to go in and have to face the Milwaukee Bucks.
It's a primer.
Yeah, that's it. To go in and to face Milwaukee, you don't want to go in having 2 easy matchups. As much as, like I said, Philly is not technically easy, a lot easier than it would have been to have to face Boston. Boston, I believe, had the season series 3-1 on the Raptors, and they won the one game in the bubble against the Raptors. They have been that bugaboo for Toronto for a long
Yeah.
time.
They crushed
And
them. They crushed them too. The one
yeah,
game the Raptors, they
oh yeah,
got crushed. So that's why I'm a little concerned.
yeah, no, and I just you brought up Kyle Lowry and his possible injury parallels to Luka Doncic rolling his ankle. The difference here is Luka runs the Mavericks, whereas Kyle Lowry, he may run the Raptors when he's on the court, but Van Vliet also runs the Raptors, and so does Norm Powell, and you have other guys you can plug in with the Raptors, whereas you're completely lost. The
Yeah.
Mavericks are completely lost without Luka Doncic, right? So the Raptors are built in a manner that the NBA is not used to. The Raptors are a very deep team, and I honestly believe that the Raptors could beat the Boston Celtics if Kyle Lowry doesn't play 1 minute of court time
Okay.
against them. I believe it'll be a much harder series without Kyle Lowry there. With Kyle Lowry, over in 6. Without, well, no, I'll go even better. With Kyle Lowry, over in 5. Without him, it's going to be a 7-game series.
Just muting myself here as I cough. But I actually I got it sitting right here. I had, what was it? I had the Raptors in 6, like I said earlier, just for the take, because I do have the Raps going on, beating the Bucks too, and again meeting the Lakers in the final. So that's something again, we could talk about the West later on, but I've got the Raps going to the final. I'm wearing the Raps hat tonight. It's part of just, you want to be on their side. But part of my issue here is, look at you. Look at you. Yeah, go Raps, go, man. And I'm surprised you're not wearing the jersey today. Part of my issue here is the Kyle Lowry question mark. But if you're telling me that he's not going to pose that big of a difference to the way the Raps are going to operate. They're still going to play defensively. They're still going to have multiple guys running the offense, handling the ball. I mean, okay, so tell me he's back in game 2 or game 3. The series is over. He might even need to take a game or 2 off, but they have I think it's 3 days rest before their series even starts. So that alone may be enough. We don't even have, and the reason I call it a question mark is we don't even have the complete answer on the scope of the injury and what it's going to do to him. So as we saw Doncic power through a sprained ankle and put up a historic 43-point triple double, which we'll get into. Yeah, I think that you're giving me more confidence that I'll stick with it. Raps in 6, and that again was before Kyle was out. I had Raps in 6. So with Kyle out, you're saying Raps in 6. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, fine. I'm a little more confident here. But I'm sticking to my guns. If they run into Milwaukee in round 3, it's going to take nothing to shut down Giannis, and there's nobody else to worry about. I don't think they're a seriously tough matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you neutralize Giannis, you really do neutralize the entire Milwaukee Bucks team. He's a hard guy to neutralize. I almost
Put
I almost
Pascal on him. I
subscribe.
think that's what they
Well,
did last year, right?
well, I almost subscribe to the let him get his points and take everyone else away, right? Because there's no way that he can outscore everybody on the team. But I'm not talking
Fair.
about not playing defense at all. I'm just saying don't double, right? Just make sure that he can't turn into a passer, right? Let him go ahead and take his points, but there's no way that he's going to outscore this team. And when you neutralize a guy like that, Chris Middleton becomes he disappears, right? Drew Bledsoe, he disappears. Actually, I don't even believe Bledsoe plays on the team anymore. I'm talking about last year's team. So, yeah, it's really hard to see Milwaukee being a title contender. It's almost like they got that one piece, and that one piece won Mike Budenholzer that Coach of the Year by the coaches. By the way, glad to see Nick Nurse get that rectified, getting the Coach of the Year award, resoundingly 90% of the vote to Nick Nurse for the Coach of the Year. Great to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bucks, you neutralize Giannis and you neutralize the entire team.
You just worry about that Lopez freak.
It's the LeBron on the Cavaliers thing, right? Like no
Yeah.
one was ever able to neutralize LeBron to the level of keeping him down, and that just tells you how much better of a player LeBron is than Giannis. But yeah, if you were able to neutralize LeBron on the Cavaliers, then you really had the team shut down. So I don't see the Bucks as a title contender, although they will beat the Heat. They will make it to the 3rd round for sure.
And like I don't know how bad the Pacers were this year, but you kind of alluded to it. I didn't expect the Heat to be sweeping their series and kind of, I mean, Jimmy Butler's good, but who else is on the Heat that I really should, I can't even think of.
Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, these guys you don't know, but they're
Thank you.
they are
Yeah.
3-point murderers. Like, I mean,
Okay.
you have to look out for these guys. You leave them open, it is in the basket for sure, and it's all mesh. These guys are just money. They're deadly beyond the arc. So Jimmy Butler can shoot the 3 too, but Jimmy Butler's got a shoulder injury. So if I'm if I'm the Bucks, I'm trying to check that shoulder as much as I possibly can. In a non-contact sport, there's only so much you can do. But if his shoulder's jacked up, there's no way he's gonna be able to get the shot off the way he wants to. So I attack that shoulder if I'm an opponent of the Heat.
Okay, and then like we were alluding to, Bucks are close to dismantling the Magic because they're 3-1. They play tomorrow afternoon, so I assume that's going to be done. But the important one for me, I want your take on. I think Houston has the edge on paper, but this series is tied 2-2 now. Houston OKC. What do you think? Because it's now a short 3-game series. How are you feeling about that one? It's the only real question mark to me in the West now. I've got confident takes on all the others, whether I'm right or wrong, but I have no clue what's going on in Houston OKC.
That's a weird series, isn't it? Right? It's an emotionally charged series. Not
Oh
even
yeah,
like without even having Russell Westbrook
just the
on the
history behind
court,
those guys.
right?
Yeah.
Just the history, having Chris Paul going up against James Harden, and then being able to see that him leading that young team of OKC. OKC, you can't really sleep on them, man, especially with the god of points, Chris Paul, just putting in basket after basket after basket,
Clutch
running that
threes.
offense, clutch threes, clutch twos, pulling up, running, driving the lane, doing everything he needs to do,
Old
being
school.
that number one guy. All of a sudden, he's no longer past his prime, and that contract looks like it's actually pretty good money, right?
Yeah.
Um,
He's on the
interesting.
first year of it too, right?
I think it might be the second year. I can't
Okay.
remember.
It's
But
yeah, it's a weird season.
it's interesting. I think Houston comes out with it. I really do. I don't think OKC's got enough to go the full 7 and win it, just because of Paul's age. But it's nice to see them do this and have a little bit of punch, have a little bit of fight. I think it's over in 6. It might go 7, but I think it's over in 6. I think Houston in 6, just because the youth, the offense, it just gets the better of OKC. But look out for the Thunder, man. That Western Conference, that's a murderer's row, man. That's a really hard place to make the playoffs in, and once you're there, it's even harder to get any success in the playoffs in the Western Conference, and that is that's depicted even more so in the other series. We're going to talk about the Clippers and the Mavericks, man. Nobody would have thought coming into the playoffs that Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and the Los Angeles Clippers were going to be having a hard time in round 1 and having to exhaust themselves to the level that they've had to exhaust themselves. But man, Luka Doncic and the Mavericks, they've done a job on them, haven't they?
Yeah, Clippers are currently up like 20 on the Mavericks right now. I was just double checking that. I was also double checking because I wanted to make sure that this series wasn't over. My next point was going to be the Utah and Denver series because it's another two teams that really like nobody cares. I hate to say nobody cares about them, but nobody cares about Utah and Denver. No, I'm sorry, but they don't. And Denver was fighting for their lives, right? Down 3-1, but they ended up pulling it off tonight. So that series is going to go at least 6 games. And I really like I'm going to take Denver just because I like ball. That's really the only reason I'm going to take them. Do you have any major takes on that series, my friend?
I love me some Donovan Mitchell. I don't love Rudy Gobert so much because of
Yes.
the stigma around him and his reputation. But the Jazz, another one of those plucky teams, right? Another one of those teams that you wouldn't expect that they'd be moving on or dominating in such a fashion. But the Nuggets I don't think they've got enough shooting to deal with what the Jazz are putting up there. But once again, getting into the next round, I don't think the Jazz got what it takes to move to the third round. So the only thing I'd like to see is a little bit of Spider Mitchell go into the hoop and just jamming it down. That guy is prime time all the time. So yeah,
Nice.
that's the main highlight for me when I'm watching those games, is watching some Donovan Mitchell.
End of the second quarter, just to get you caught up here. The Clippers are up 71-47. So that's why I was a little concerned about the Mavericks. Let's get into that one now because again, just to recap, Utah and Denver. Denver stays alive for now, but man, I honestly thought that game was over. It went into OT, that game 4 of the Mavericks and Clippers series. I turned it on halfway through. I'm thinking, oh yeah, there's a basketball game on today. Anytime Kawhi's playing, I'm like, let's go. Because you know me, I'm not a huge basketball fan, but like that run last year, it really makes fan out of you. And especially watching a guy like Kawhi, how good he is, it's amazing, dude. You turn it on and it's like so familiar. I'm seeing him and his face on camera, and I'm like, there he is, there's my boy, there's Kawhi. I thought he had won the game with that no-look pass late in overtime to, I think it was Morris, hits a 3, and you're going, wow, great game, Mavericks, but you lost. Kawhi got it done. And then all of a sudden, buzzer beater, the ridiculous 40-point triple-double by Doncic. He caps it with a fucking three-pointer from where? The step back 3. You're just like, man, the kid's unreal. So I like the Mavericks, but I'm sorry, Clippers are winning it. I got to stick with the Kawhi bias. And, like, I think it's him and LeBron, best guys in the NBA right now, right? Like, to tell me Doncic isn't one of the best players in the league, you're flat out lying. But to tell me Kawhi isn't above and beyond one of the, like, if it's not LeBron, it's Kawhi, best player in the world. I just think Kawhi's guys are going to get it done. But with the Mavericks missing another key piece and just relying on Doncic, that might be like a big reason why I think that the Clippers have that advantage. Because in another timeline with everybody healthy, even Doncic alone is giving them a run for their money, is he not?
So if you've got a hot take alarm, you should sound it right now because it's about to come.
Yeah.
There's one is about to come out. Kawhi Leonard isn't the best player in this series.
You think it's
I'm
Doncic
sorry.
already on that performance alone?
No, not just on that performance, on everything he does for the team, on the way that he battles, on his.
I think
his
that sums it
desire
up. That sums it up
and
right
his
there.
drive
43-point
to be
triple
there.
double. That sums
Like,
up
I
all of
mean,
it.
he was fantastic. He continues to be fantastic for the Mavericks. And I'm sorry, I have to say this though. There's no way in hell that Luka Doncic has the space to get that shot off on the Toronto Raptors. Nick Nurse
No,
doesn't allow it.
they play tighter
Pascal
defense.
Siakam, someone's on him. Someone is tight up on him, and he's not getting the space to make that shot. So, Doc, you got out coached by Carlisle, and you just got to eat that one. And I see that they have eaten it, and they're coming back with a little bit of retribution here. Luka Doncic is the best player in this series, and nothing is better. I loved the game. I loved the finish. I loved the outcome. I've got the Mavericks winning this series. Love the celebration. But you know what I love the most?
What's that?
Kawhi Leonard to take his salty ass back to his room and watch the Raptors win with 150 points and get 100 points off their bench.
Yeah, NBA record, right? NBA record, 100 points.
100 points off the bench, Ryan?
Yeah.
The bench. I understand it's the Nets. I get it. And can I take a side note and give a little bit of praise to the New Jersey? This is how old I am.
Old school John with the New Jersey Nets.
The Brooklyn. Can I give it a little love to the Brooklyn Nets, because that team, as much as they got swept by the Toronto Raptors, they gave them a hard time, and they had no DeAndre Jordan, they had no Kyrie Irving, they had no Kevin Durant.
That's the guy I was thinking of. Yeah.
3 massive stars.
Yeah.
One guy in the paint, one guy running the point, and one guy on the 3-point line.
It's essentially their 3 starters. Their 3 main starters weren't all even. Yeah.
You plug those guys in, and man, I'm not saying the Raptors don't win that series, but they don't sweep it for damn sure.
You plug those guys in, and they might be able to beat Boston, Milwaukee, Raptors. I think they might be the best team in the East. Honestly,
I mean, it's scary. It's scary when you think of it, because like you're thinking like Chris LeVert, the dude who was running the Nets,
4th guy.
Right, he's the 4th guy.
Yeah,
and then the number 2 to Chris LeVert is now number 5, right? And it's just insane the math that goes on in your head. And then on top of that, we're hearing about possibly Greg Popovich going to coach.
I heard that.
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Oh my God, instant title contender right there. Because he not only do you have the talent, but now you've got the man to walk in the room and say, "I'm Greg Mother effing Popovich, and you're going to listen to me. I don't care if your name ends with or your name is Durant, Irving, or Jordan. My name is Popovich, and I'm number one here in this locker room.
Do you know why that would just feel right? It's a weird thing in my mind, but he's going from the Spurs and their color scheme to the Nets and their color scheme.
Black
And
and
I'll
white.
say that I'll say this. Somebody said, "Oh, he's going back to hockey." By the way, the Vancouver Canucks are up 2-0 on Vegas early on. So
Woo!
good on Vancouver, way to keep it up. You got it. You got to bounce back in the series. We mentioned it earlier. But somebody brought up Montreal's going to need a lot of scoring, and you know one guy I really think belongs there. I could just picture him in a Habs jersey, Mike Hoffman. And right away I was like, you're right, but think about this. Mike Hoffman's only ever worn red.
Yeah,
It's
he's
true.
gone from the Senators to the Panthers,
That's
and
why you picture him in a Habs jersey. As
that's
long as
it.
you follow the same color scheme, so there's how my brain works. I'm not a girl, I promise, but a little bit of interior
I like
decorating
him.
going
I
on in
like
that
the
head.
mascot. That's why they're gonna win.
He's
You
the
know what?
cutest, so he should be
Yeah,
the starting forward.
yeah, and that's exactly what. And then they end up scoring 12 goals, right? Like it's
Yeah.
insane. Yeah, I don't know how people end up picking things like that.
Yeah, my girlfriend's the best to bet because she doesn't go on like the sports knowledge, but she'll just go on the simple things like aesthetics. And believe it or not, it works a lot. You can't knock it till you try it. I mean,
Well, it's the layman's method, right? Like we know so much, maybe it's too much, and we're
yes.
overthinking our
Yep.
decisions and rethinking and double thinking. And it's just, and then we make the wrong choice, right?
Yep.
Whereas someone else who doesn't have as much knowledge is like that one, when it really is a 50-50 choice when you think of it.
Yeah.
It's a game. As much as one team might be better than the other, it's a 50-50 choice.
Exactly. Like you never know all the other factors that are coming here, and that's why there's such a conversation around the injuries and how we're going to reveal them and starting goalies and the way the NHL is potentially going to lose a lot of business if they keep skirting around the truth. Right? They don't really like to give out information, and it's notoriously been a thing. Coaches here and there, not telling you who the opening day, who the starting goalie is on the day of a game, things like that. Well, that really factors into betting, right? So that's a whole other can of worms, but it brings me to that conversation. Only other series we haven't talked about, it's the last one in the West, and it's the Lakers. They've got the 3-1 series lead over Dame and the Trailblazers, and I think with that dislocated finger, that's going to essentially seal the deal for the
It's his
Blazers. I
knee.
think
He's done.
it's
He's
his
out.
knee too. I thought he
He's out.
dislocated his
He's
finger.
out for Game 5. He dislocated his finger, but he's out for Game 5 with a bad knee.
Yeah, so they're done,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and he was a big story in the first kind of week of the playoffs because he was draining threes like Steph Curry from half court. And you're like, okay, Dame Lillard is on another level. So it kind of looked like it was going to be a tougher series. I think you'd agree, but again, the Lakers and LeBron with Anthony Davis, like it's a combination made in heaven. So they got a commanding 3-1 series lead, and when it's Lakers Clippers in the second round, I'm gonna have Lakers again. I think that's what I wrote down. I know you said you had the Mavericks winning. John, I wrote down Lakers in 5 over the Mavericks. Apparently, I have Mavericks winning 2 in 6. I've got Mavericks over the Rockets in 6. So I've got the Rockets winning, I've got the Mavericks winning, but I've got the Lakers taking it and then beating the Raptors in 6. Unfortunately, that was my storybook ending. I don't have it as a back-to-back just because I don't think we get nice things in this market. I don't think we deserve nice things, number one. So the fact that we got one championship is crazy enough. But I think the Raptors are going to get to the final, play the Lakers. I just think LeBron's going to get it done in 6. But back to that Lakers series here. I really don't think they have much trouble. It's probably going to be over by the end of the next game, and then we'll have pretty much everything sorted out except for the Houston OKC. It's really a toss-up because I don't think either one of us can really call it now in a small 3-game series. It's anyone's.
Yeah. Okay. So, first things first. Getting to the Lakers Blazers series. Blazers have a great team. Lillard, great player. Nurkic, great
TJ
player.
McCollum too.
McCollum, just bad luck, bad injuries. I honestly I had the Blazers in 6 after Game 1. I thought the
Wow.
Blazers were going to be able to do enough to neutralize, just because I don't think the Lakers have enough surrounding LeBron and AD, especially with the likes of Rajon Rondo on the team right now, with him being out to injury. Marcus Morris has been playing well above his water level. Well above, and that could be the LeBron James effect, right? But he has been. I don't. Caruso has been playing amazing, but I just don't think that the Lakers have enough. It reminds me a lot of the Cavaliers situation that LeBron had himself in, and
Yeah,
the
but with
Raptors
Anthony
actually
Davis.
the Raptors actually have a quite a substantial winning streak against the Lakers. So I believe it's in double digits. I think it's 13. I don't know for sure. But the Raptors haven't lost to the Lakers in quite some time now. Understanding that LeBron James has been the Raptors' boogaboo, but personally, when I think of it, they don't scare me. Nobody in the West scares me, but maybe the Mavericks right now, as silly as that sounds, simply because I think that the Raptors know how to neutralize Kawhi and they could beat the Clippers. I think the Raptors know how to neutralize AD and LeBron because they've done that now in his older age. He's not LeBron he used to be. I think
Yeah.
that the Raptors are a very strong, very deep team, whereas if one person isn't shooting, you can plug in another guy. It's a plug and play system here. Whereas if someone's not if LeBron isn't shooting and AD's not going, who's going to carry the water? Obviously that's not going to happen too often, but if one isn't going and the other's going, then the other one's got to carry the water for the entire team, right? It doesn't happen on the Raptors. I'm not afraid of any team in the West as the are coming out against the Raptors. I think the Raptors will repeat as champions. That may be me being a homer, but I'm just looking at the construction of the team.
That's all right.
I'm looking at the way the team is coached.
Yeah.
And I just think that it is one of the most complete squads in the entire NBA and definitely the most slept on team in the entire NBA. I think LeBron knows that. He has said that. Kawhi obviously knows that he's been there and now he's been somewhere else. He may be having buyer's remorse. We don't know. But one thing's for sure, there's a massive opt-out year coming up. And I can tell you right now, he's the one buyer's remorse he is having is the PG buyer's remorse because he's really putting up a stinker, man. He's not doing anything. And the Clippers paid a lot of assets to get that guy there. Apparently, he wasn't the number one selection either. The first guy Kawhi wanted was actually Jimmy Buckets. He wanted Jimmy Butler, and
Those
they
guys,
couldn't get Butler to come
I
to the
could not
Clippers.
see those two getting along. One guy says nothing, and the other guy doesn't shut the hell up. Whereas PG is at least kind of quiet too, right?
Yeah, no, PG's definitely quiet. He's a really
Like
stoic guy.
Jimmy
He hasn't
Butler's
been
like
doing anything,
almost
man.
not likable.
Yeah, I don't. Butler. I remember Butler bullying the
Yeah,
entire
he's a
locker room in
bully.
Philly.
He's a bully.
And he does have that sort of perception, that persona. But that's what's out there right now is that Kawhi originally he wanted Jimmy Butler. He did not want Paul George, and they couldn't get Jimmy Butler, and Paul George was the second choice. And you know,
I wonder
always the
what Kawhi's
bridesmaid, never
uncle's first choice was. Hey, what was
the
uncle?
bride. Having
What was the uncle's first choice? Do you think was it Jimmy Buckets or Paul George?
oh my goodness,
Remember how
it's
invested the uncle was there? He got paid off real well. That was the story. He wanted all these different like factors added to the deal, and it was like starting to get really like
he wanted
chaotic.
a piece of the team.
Yeah, he wanted ownership in the team. Like he wanted a house bought for him. Didn't he want
Yep.
like crazy things?
Yeah, he wanted actual straight up cash. Yeah, and that's not legal. We can't give you straight up cash.
He wanted
Um,
45 grand under the table. Like
like it doesn't work
unreal.
this way. Maybe Steve Ballmer worked it that way. We don't know. But the best sound clip of the decade may end up being that Steve Ballmer clip where it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's not cool. It's not cool, Steve.
Oh,
And we'll see how cool Kawhi thinks is. Like I said, he has an opt-out clause, man. He's got an opt-out clause after 2 years. So it may be a quick stay at home, and he may be on the move. And I got to be honest, man, welcome him back with open arms. Come on
oh,
back. Come home.
of course.
Come on.
Just because you signed somewhere else doesn't mean we're not gonna just look the other way when you want to come back. Let's get into some baseball because we got to get out of here eventually. Holy
Oh no,
smokes!
100%. We're getting really long. Not a lot of baseball stuff though.
No.
Jays are doing fantastic. They lost today to the Red Sox, of course.
Oh, it ended up being a loss.
Yeah, it was a 9-7 loss. They were leading most of the game there. They were dominating, and then the back end of the bullpen got to or gave up the game for them. Not a good showing for the Blue Jays in this one at the end of the game, but they've had a lot of injuries. They've had a lot of injuries to their pitchers. They've had a lot of guys go down with elbows, right?
Thornton, Pearson, now Shoemaker.
Yeah, Shoemaker, Giles.
I almost forgot. Giles has been on the IL since a month now.
Yeah, he's been on the IL for a while. I believe it was Washington that
Like first
before we
series.
even before we even had to go on the hiatus. But yeah, it it's interesting to see them persevere. They're one game under 500 now at 14-15 in the playoffs right now. And Vladdy Guerrero, I don't know if he got a hit tonight, but before tonight he was on a 7-game hitting streak. So suck on that, Rob Wong. The Blue Jays. I think that most Blue Jays fans thought they had a chance at contending in this 60-game season, and they're showing that they have the ability to do it. Third in the AL East behind the likes of the Yankees
And
and
the
the
Rays. The
Rays.
Rays are
Um,
soaring.
yeah, the Rays are killing it right now. I believe I have their. No, I don't have their record. I don't think. But they've only had 11 losses, and the Yankees only have 9 losses. But the Yankees are in second because they haven't played as many games as the Rays.
Right. Because everything's
So
gone to shit since we
yeah,
started.
everything has been just like up in the air. It's really funny, we speculated how MLB would deal with it, and apparently they're going to deal with it like let's just take a tarp and throw it over the teams that are sick at the time and hope that the tarp keeps all the germs in. That's how this feels. Like
Yeah.
you think that they would shut the entire league down and take a break, but nope, we're just going to throw a tarp over it, and hopefully everyone gets better. It seems to be working for now, but it's definitely chaotic. Great to see the Jays, though. I think that they'll be able to continue to contend. Just hitting dingers after dingers, though, man. Like the Blue Jays, I don't know if it's because they're in Salem Field a lot of the time, and Salem Field, is just a friendly place for like the Bobichet's not playing, but the Bobichet's, the Vladdies,
There's
the
another injury
Bichios
though. Not even to the
of the
pitching
world.
staff, but there's another injury that they've had to get over and deal with. 'Cause
Bo,
Bo will still be out for another week or so, right? He's had that sprained knee.
Well, yeah, we're lucky it's a sprain, right? Like
Hmm.
he had gone to 2 different doctors. Now, when you hear that he's going to get a second opinion, automatically you think, "Oh my goodness, the first opinion's bad," right?
Yeah.
Well, it came out that actually the first opinion was good. It was rest and exercise. They just rest and relaxation, and then exercise to get it back into shape. Um, uh, then the second opinion was the same, right? So we actually saw Bo Bichette tonight not playing, but for the first time on camera, we seen him in the dugout with the
Nice.
team. He looked like he wanted to be out there, as you would expect him, wanted to be out there. He quickly has become the franchise on this team. It's really funny.
Yep.
If you go back a couple years, go back a year, whenever it was, I believe I
Vladdy.
said that Bo Bichette
Oh.
will be the bigger star than Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
I just remember
And
everybody going crazy about Vladdy and
Vladdy,
forgetting that
yeah,
we had an entire pipeline of guys coming up, right?
yeah, 100%. Everyone just automatically goes for the name. Now, not that Vlad hasn't been doing well. Vlad, he admitted himself he got into shape in spring training. Pandemic happened, and he got fat again. And he wasn't as athletic as he should have been. He couldn't get the bat speed that he was getting, but now he's on a new workout regimen again. He does his exercise, he's getting in better shape, and look, we're seeing the progress. We're seeing the bat speed come back, we're seeing the contact come back, we're seeing the power come back. He hit a ball so hard tonight, like it was a line drive to center field, that I think never got more than 3 or 4 feet off the ground, but it made it to the center
Oh my
fielder's glove.
gosh.
It was
Imagine getting
literally a
hit by that
bullet.
line drive.
It was a bullet. Like it was the hardest hit
Gross.
ball I've ever seen, and yeah, it just goes right into the center fielder's glove, holding his arm down like this, and just insane. So yeah, you're seeing the bat speed come back for Vladdy. Hopefully, we get the average up, and yeah, you get Bo back in the game, and who knows, if you can't get Bo Bichette back until you're about to go to possibly the playoffs, what a better time to get back a guy who could lead your team. What a better time to get back Bo Bichette. I mean, I just can't imagine being able to get a guy like that back going into a playoff push.
Yeah.
It would be like a massive, or getting a massive trade in there, right? So yeah, the Blue Jays have an embarrassment of riches right now. And normally when you are a team with an embarrassment of riches, you just get richer, right? The rich get richer. So hopefully that happens for the Blue Jays. Hopefully that happens in free agency. Hopefully that happens at the upcoming trade deadline that's
Yeah.
fast approaching, and the Blue Jays add maybe another Scott Boras client. Who knows?
Well, you kind of alluded to the two things I wanted to talk about. The one thing, it's a new one, is Boba Shed essentially being his team, and Steve Phillips brought this up earlier on. I 100% agree with this. He ain't no Vladdy. He's not mashing dingers, but he's the captain of this team, and he will be the captain of the team. It's his oyster, right? Like essentially, he's the Derek Jeter that is
I
going to be.
made that comparison years. Sorry to cut you
And
off. I
it's
made that
funny that you say that because I
so
feel like you've said that before.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I hated making it at the time because of the weight it was putting on Bo.
Right.
Right? I never wanted to put that weight on him, but it was the position he was shortstop, right? And the way he carried himself, the way he hits the ball. Anyway, continue on. I've made that
No,
comparison before, though. It's great,
absolutely.
Derek
That's
Jeter.
that's it,
Continue.
right? And it's funny. You know what you're talking about, John. Let's not split hairs here. You know what you're talking about. The other thing was Ross Atkins alluded to it earlier. Pitching and run prevention are essentially the main concerns with this team going forward. And now that they've got a ton of guys on the IL, I'd written down Shoemaker, Pearson, Thornton. I completely forgot about Giles. You start to think, okay, if they've got an embarrassment of riches and they need to get richer, that August 31st trade deadline it's fast approaching, right? We're talking about less than a week away. It's the 25th. Yeah, but a week away. And apparently Marlins Taijuan Walker, Kevin Gossman of the Giants, and then Alex Cobb, they're all potentially available starters. So I read that in a Jays report. So those are the three names that I can at least say have been connected to the Jays. I don't know how closely connected to the Jays, but they're at least being brought up in talks. You think about what the Jays would need to add. It is guys in the pitching rotation, in the bullpen, in the starting rotation. So I'm curious to see what moves get made. But again, I don't blame Atkins for doing nothing when you've got this much in the prospect pipeline and so many more kind of positive potential years ahead of you. You don't necessarily need to pull the trigger, do a knee jerk, anything if it's going to cost you down the road. But hey, if this season, if they really think, okay, we're in a playoff spot for now, we're around 500, thanks to those expanded playoffs, we're contending, it might be worth their while to explore and see if they can pull in one of these three or somebody else not mentioned on the list. I think Atkins already alluded to it earlier in the season, and it can't be more true now. Essentially, with the loss of some of these guys, like defense and pitching is going to win you championships. So um, I can almost parallel these young Jays. They don't have a lot of old guys or a Carey Price with them, but like the young Montreal Canadiens, they got all this unexpected experience in the first round of their playoffs this year, and the only cost was not getting Alexei Lafreniere. Really, they only had a 12% chance anyway. So it's one of those kind of years for the Jays where hey, maybe they spend at the deadline and do something crazy, but maybe they're just enjoying the experience they get, and essentially it's one more notch in the belt for some of these guys. But you all already mentioned like the amount of injuries they've gone through. They might not have to be even looking, at the trade market around this time if they hadn't lost Giles and Pearson and Shoemaker and Thornton, and Bo Bichette now too, finally coming back. It's just one of those seasons. Some teams go through it where you just keep losing guy after guy after guy, and as you mentioned, they persevere. So good on them.
By
Persevere
the way,
away.
don't be surprised if you see Nate Pearson come back this year, but as a reliever.
Ah,
Um,
not in a starting role. Interesting.
not in, just for this year, just so that they don't have to stretch his arm out and so that they can still get him some work. But
Okay.
that could be something where you may see a Nate Pearson coming out as a eighth inning reliever in the playoffs. Could you
Speaking
imagine
of
that?
pitching, that would be interesting. That would be, I mean, if they have an arm like that, you would almost expect him to start throwing in triple digits instead of, maybe being a little bit more careful and stamina wise. You'd expect him to maybe hit the triple digits and see what kind of stuff he's got in a big moment. That
Yeah.
would be kind of cool too. Another term I learned this week, it's brand new and it relates to pitching. You know what an ephus pitch is, John?
You know what? I heard of it, but I have never looked it up.
Zach
It's like 50 some odd miles an hour.
Yeah, Zach Greinke pulled one out this week, and there's a video of him just like he's playing backyard baseball, man. He straight up throws like a lob pitch, and it's like I forget who was at the plate, but he just kind of like as it's coming in and he's not swinging at it, he's like looking at Greinke like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You're throwing that?" So I'd never expect anybody to be that ballsy in the highest level of a sport. Like MLB is the cream of the crop, and this guy's turning nonchalant, throwing an intentional 54 mile an hour lob pitch. It blew my mind. But if you get a chance, check that out, and I may even add that into the editing at the end there. So hopefully it's fun.
Yeah, I definitely seen the update of it, and the weirdest pitch I've ever seen, I believe it was from the KBO. and the pitcher, he drew his arm back, and then somehow the ball launched over his shoulder. And he threw it. That I don't know how he did it. It's sort of gymnastic acrobatics, some weirdness, but it was very slow. So I just imagine some sort of trickery like that. In regards to pitchers on the trade market, you brought up 3 good ones, but I'll bring up one that the Jays could target before we get out of here. A guy who's lost a lot of name value because of some poor choices, and a guy whose team is struggling. Mike Clevenger from the Cleveland. I'm not going to say your team name. From Cleveland, he's a possible guy that you could bring in as a starting pitcher. He's a guy who has given the Jays trouble year after year after year. Someone you could plug in as a 3, even maybe as high as a number 2 starter right behind Ryu. It'd be interesting to see, but I could see the Blue Jays targeting Mike Clevenger and bringing him in as well.
Interesting. The last thing I want to talk about is the Tatis story, man. We'll save some NFL news for the next pod because it's just camps right now. There's not tons going on, and it gives us some time to kind of follow for another week before we really break into anything.
Well,
but
except for the massive story about the positive or the false positive tests that were happening in the NFL because of the lab they were sending them to, and so there was like 67 false positive tests in the NFL this past week. And it was all from one lab in New Jersey. And the lab came back and was like, oh, someone accidentally brought it into the lab, the virus. So all of the tests were positive because someone brought COVID into the lab.
Get your shit together.
So like, I'm not even going to get into, and this has been said before, I'm not even going to get into the rabbit hole that is how often has that happened. How many of these tests are that way because of this happening? But that's about the only story the NFL has. Hopefully they get that they're in order, and that was quite funny.
Well, next time we get together, I do want to talk about like some of the storylines. Like you got a guy like Kyler Murray. He's got DeAngelo, DeAndre Hopkins. Oh my God! Like he's got a massive weapon to throw to this year. So I really want to kind of tee up maybe next time we get together, like little couple storylines from NFL camps and things to watch out for. Obviously Brady's a Buck and Cam Newton's in New England. So we have a lot of things to actually talk about, but we'll save it for another time because we've been on here forever. The Tatis story is the one I want to get out of here on because unwritten rules, man, unwritten rules in baseball. It sounds like BS to me. But just to fill anybody in who doesn't know, I'm surprised if you don't, but was it a grand slam you hit?
It was a grand slam.
So 3-0 count, and I'm the first to find this out, but it was essentially unwritten rules in baseball where you don't make a guy look bad that's playing bad. But I mean, any sport that I grew up playing, if a guy's going to like give you a gift, you accept it with open arms. And that's essentially what Fernando Tatis did. He swung at a 3-0 count and he connected. And he hit a dinger. And as far as I know, John, he didn't bat flip. He didn't really watch it. He didn't do anything to pimp it. But it's just an unwritten rule. You're not supposed to make somebody look bad when they're making themselves look bad enough as it is, I guess, right? Like, was that the whole conversation here?
Okay, so pretty much you're not supposed to run up the score, right? But what's really funny is and we have some relevance today, Ryan. Today, the Toronto Blue Jays were winning by an extended margin, and they lost 9-7. This is baseball. We're talking about the sport that has tainted balls, where we're launching home runs out at ridiculous rates. It is never out of reach in this game.
Yes, exactly.
So your unwritten BS rule of not running up the score is just nonsense. You know what there needs to be an unwritten rule for? Sucking so bad that you give up a grand slam in 4 straight games, Texas Rangers. 4 straight games.
When did they give up when did they give up the Tatis one? Please tell me it was the first one.
First game.
That's called karma. That's called karma, buddy. That's
4 grand slams. It was insane, man. Like, there should be an unwritten rule about how bad the Texas Rangers suck. That's what there needs to be an unwritten rule about. But Fernando Tatis having a little bit of fun. Man, you know what I didn't like about it all? His own bloody manager not coming out and coming to his defense. When Jose Bautista, bat flip against the who?
Texas Rangers. I don't know, the big whiny Texas Rangers.
When he did that, What did Gibby do? He came to the defense of his man. And that's what your manager's supposed to do. I don't know how Tatis looks his manager in the eye after he doesn't come to his defense there. His manager, the best he said is, oh, you don't want to stifle his creativity. You don't want to stifle his aggressiveness, whatever. You should have said, that's what he's supposed to do. He's our number one guy. He's supposed to hit dingers. Woo! That's what you do in that position. not just not feed into the BS storylines. And Tatis stealing third the next game and just
Up
doing
6 runs. Up 6 runs.
It's the big middle finger.
You guys can eat it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Eat it. This is what I think of your unwritten bullshit.
Yeah,
it's a joke.
So it's stupid. It was stupid during the Jose Bautista bat flip. It's stupid now. People who are old school get with the new school. The game has changed.
Yeah. You know who Tatis is to me right now? He's a combination of Bo Bichette and Vladdy Guerrero Jr. And I cannot believe that we thought that's
must watch TV.
Yeah, we literally thought Vladdy or Bo was Fernando Tatis Jr. And no, it's you take them combined and that's Tatis. Because now today or later this week or whatever it was like 2-3 days ago, he was in the news again for another highlight reel Eric Jordan catch, robs a guy of a hit, and you're like, okay, so this guy can hit dingers, steal bases, and play defense. All right. Just double checking, making sure all the boxes are checked. Yes. Oh, can he pit? I wouldn't be surprised if he can throw 95. straight.
Yeah.
Can
Put
paint
him on the
corners.
mound. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. It's not even just throw 95. Let's see if he can. He's got that 12-6 breaking ball. He hits the corner every time. Yeah, that's what it is.
Because he's Tatis Jr. He's like, it's the junior that we all thought Vladdy Guerrero Jr. was going to be. No. Tatis is literally Vladdy with a bit of Bo in him, too. I think it's insane, man.
Yeah. Fernando Tatis is the real deal. I'll count myself as one of the guys who laughed at Manny Machado for signing in San Diego. Oh, you chased the money. Well, maybe he foresaw what they had there in San Diego. And I got to give it to Manny, by the way. Manny Machado, the shortstop / third baseman, made a ridiculous over-the-shoulder catch in right field. It was obviously on a shift. You know how you play a 4-man outfield, right? So it was obviously on a shift. But down the right field line, chasing the ball down, reaches out and makes an over-the-shoulder grab.
Unreal.
Just an unreal catch. The best catch Manny Machado has ever made in his entire career. And he's been an outstanding defender on the infield. But just something like you bring up the Air Jordan catch by Tatis and it was just one of those things where you're just like, wow, the Padres are just making headlines right now and they're taking advantage of this shortened season. And the Padres could be a force to be reckoned with here.
Think about that defense, though, when you got third base and shortstop of Tatis and Machado. There's like the two most athletic defensive players out there that can also rake. I think is it lefties or righties that Machado's just completely deadly against? Like
I believe
deadly.
It's lefties.
One of the two. Either way. Like he's unfortunately
it's lefties in MLB 20, I can tell you that much.
Well, yeah, exactly. And unfortunately he can't hit everybody, but you get him up against the right matchup and he's a stud. So it's like, holy shit, man! That team is better than you think, just based on those two guys alone. They obviously have a lot of building to do around them, but if they've been taking advantage of the season and you see the experience they get, and some of their young guys, again, just like every team, every sport, the young guys take advantage when you're hot. You ride hot seasons like this. So I won't keep you any longer, buddy. We're already at 11 o'clock. This is a long pod.
I'm at 18% battery, so we got to get out.
We'll split, but next time we get together, we should have the entirety of round 2 in the NBA going on. We should have some more news on NFL camps. We should almost have round 3 either started or primed for the NHL. So if anything, it'll be a couple days from now, but we'll know a lot more by then.
All right.
Peace. Take care, buddy. Have a good rest of your week. See ya.
Later, man.